ഒരു 15 സെക്കൻഡ്.
Hello friends, welcome to Aifer Education. So in the previous days we have been discussing some important topics for the upcoming NET examinations. First of all, how many days we have for the examination? How many days we have? Is it 9 days or is it 8 days or is it 7 days? How many days we have? We have just 7 days for the examination. Then how your studies are going? Is it going well or isn't it going well? Anyway, I hope you all are studying well for the upcoming examination. So, usually we discuss the topics mathematical reasoning, but these days we have been discussing communication and the higher education, right? I hope you have watched the videos in the YouTube channel which we have uploaded, which we have taken in the previous days. I hope you have watched that. So, what was the topic we discussed yesterday? What was the topic? What was the topic we discussed yesterday? Yesterday we discussed the topic from higher education, that was Indian Constitution. While starting the discussion, we said that it is one of the important topic comes from the higher education topic, right? We can, when we check the question papers or when we analyze the question papers which NTA has asked in the previous term, we can understand that there are number of questions we can get from the Indian Constitution, right? NTA asked number of questions from the topic Constitution, right? That's why we discussed yesterday the key points and the fundamentals of Constitution. What were the topics we discussed yesterday? We discussed about the introduction of the Constitution. We discussed about the composition of Constituent Assembly. We discussed the major and the minor committees. How many major committees and minor committees were there in the Constituent Assembly? How many major committees and how many minor committees? There were 8 major committees and 13 minor committees were in the Constituent Assembly, and we discussed all that things detail, and we discussed about the very important topic drafting commission. Who was the chairman of drafting commission? Who was the chairman of drafting commission? The chairman of the drafting commission was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Sahib. Then how many members were there in the drafting committee? How many members were? Yes, we discussed that, we studied that there were 7 members in the drafting committee. Then we discussed that the functions of Constituent Assembly. What is the main and fundamental purpose of Constituent Assembly? The answer is the fundamental or the basic purpose of forming a Constituent Assembly is to form or to draft a constitution. And we discussed that apart from forming or drafting a constitution, they performed some other functions, like they adopted national anthem, national song, and they elected President of the India. Like the sum of the other functions were contributed that Constituent Assembly. Then how many numbers were there in the Constituent Assembly, and why January 26 is celebrated as Republic Day? Why January 26 celebrated as Republic Day? All these things we discussed in detail in the last class. So in this video, first of all, I want to tell you something, that the important thing is, if you missed it or if you didn't watch the video of the yesterday's class, you have to watch. You have to watch it must, because there were we discussed some of the important and the basic concepts regarding the Indian Constitution. And there were some important dates we discussed, important years we discussed, important months we discussed, and each and every fundamentals we discussed in the last class. So if you missed that or if you didn't watch that, or if you haven't watched it yet, you have to watch now itself or today itself. Then today we are going to take the second part of the basics of Indian Constitution. So the fundamentals we have discussed in the last class, and regarding the drafting committee we have discussed in the last class. Today we are going to discuss the features of the Indian Constitution. Right, features of the Indian Constitution. Today we are going to discuss the topic features of the Indian Constitution. Is it important? Is it important for the NET examination? Yes, we can say that it is very important. Some of the features are very important in terms of the UGC NTA NET paper 1 question paper. Very important. We can be expected questions from this topic. We can be expected questions. So we have to study well. All these points we have to study. Not only for the examination purpose, but also as a citizen of India, we have to understand all these things for this time. For the time being, we have to study all these things for the upcoming examination. So we can look into the main features, some of the important features I have taken. So we are going to discuss that. The first one is lengthiest written constitution. Okay, one of the important feature of the Indian Constitution is it is lengthiest written constitution. Then we can say that it was drawn from various sources. It is another feature. Then another characteristics is blend of rigidity and flexibility. Blend of rigidity and flexibility. Then parliamentary form of government. Everyone knows that. Then a secular state. India is a secular state, and the universal adult franchise. So these are the some key features. These are the some key points. These are the some key characteristics of the Indian Constitution. Okay. So what are the key features? Lengthiest written constitution, drawn from various sources, blend of rigidity and flexibility, parliamentary form of government, a secular state, universal adult franchise. So these we can say that these are the important features of the constitution. So in the next slides we can check one by one. So first of all, we said that Indian Constitution is known as lengthiest written constitution. Okay, Indian Constitution, there are mainly two kinds of constitution. First one is written constitution and the second one is unwritten constitution. So Indian Constitution is, which type of constitution is Indian Constitution? Which type of constitution? Is it written constitution or unwritten constitution? Yes, we can say that Indian Constitution is a written constitution. Not only the written constitution, but in this world we have a lengthiest written constitution. So it is one of the important feature. Now how many articles we have now? How many articles are there? How many parts are there? How many schedules are there? So we have to understand we have now 448 articles, 25 parts and 12 schedules. Right? We have 448 articles, 25 parts and 12 schedules. And these things we discussed in the last session. And how many articles we had when we form a constitution? How many parts or how many schedules or how many schedules and how many articles we had when we draft a constitution? And how many changes are there? So we all these things discussed in the last class. So here we have to understand, now we have a lengthiest written constitution and we have 448 articles and 25 parts. That 448 articles divided into 25 parts and 12 schedules. So these numbers we should have keep in our mind while going to write the examination. These numbers we must keep in our mind. Then we can move to next one. So the another feature is Indian Constitution is known as drawn from various sources. Okay. So we have taken some of the key points from the other constitutions. That is why it is known as drawn from various sources. Like there is an argument. We most probably we may hear about that there is an argument like Indian constitution is copied, right? Indian constitution was copied from the constitution of some other countries. There is an argument like this, but actually we didn't copy from any other constitution. Actually we didn't copy any points from any other institution, but in fact we can say that we inspired some of the important points in some other constitution, some countries constitution, right? So when we check about the features, various features about the Indian constitution, so we have to understand, in the exam point of view, we have to understand that in which country. So we already said that even though we didn't copy from any other constitution, but we inspired some of the key points, some of the rules from some other constitution. So in the exam point of view, it is one of the important points. So we can be expected questions. We can be expected questions from this topic. So this feature, that drawn from various sources, this feature is very important because many times NTA asked questions from this topic. So we can be expected again and again the question from this topic. So here we have to understand, we have a feature, parliamentary government, right? Which type of government in India? Is it presidential government or is it parliamentary government? We have parliamentary government, right? No one has any doubt, I think. So the concept, the parliamentary government was from British constitution, right? We inspired the feature parliamentary form of government from the British constitution. So we have to understand that parliamentary form of government we inspired from the British constitution. Then fundamental rights, right? We have fundamental rights, right? So how many fundamental rights we have? How many fundamental rights? There are 6 fundamental rights we have. Actually in the initial days we had 7 fundamental rights, but now we have 6 fundamental rights. What are these 6 fundamental rights? So we will discuss in the next class. So here in this session we have to understand that the concept of fundamental rights we inspired from US Constitution and the directive principles of state policy. So this we inspired from Ireland or the Irish Constitution. Then concurrent list, right? We have a concurrent list. So the concept of concurrent list we inspired from Australian Constitution. Then fundamental duties we inspired from USSR Constitution. Then republic and the idea of liberty, equality, fraternity, right? In the preamble, it started in the preamble. In the preamble we can see the names of liberty, equality and the fraternity, right? So these concept we selected, or this concept we inspired from French Constitution, right? So these things we have to remember, it is very important. So the idea of parliamentary government we have got from the British Constitution, and the idea of fundamental rights we inspired from US Constitution, and the idea of directive principles of state policy we selected from Irish Constitution, and the idea of concurrent list we inspired from Australian Constitution, the idea of fundamental duties we inspired from USSR Constitution, then the idea of liberty, equality, fraternity we selected from the French Constitution. So there will be a chance of match the following questions regarding this topic. So we have to understand it clearly. So first of all we discussed about the feature drawn from the various. So first of all we discussed regarding the lengthiest written constitution. Then another important feature is drawn from various sources. Then we can move to next. Then blend of rigidity and flexibility. So another key feature of the Indian Constitution is it is blend of rigidity and flexibility. What does it mean? why Indian constitution is known as blend of rigidity and flexibility. Why Indian constitution is known as blend of rigidity and flexibility. So we have know that there are some, we can divide it, there are some, in some countries they have a flexible constitution, right? In some countries they have a rigid constitution. So we can be divided the constitution like we can say that flexible constitution and rigid constitution. We can be divided a constitution like flexible constitution, and we can say that rigid constitution. Then what is rigid constitution or what is flexible constitution? What does it mean? What do you mean by rigid constitution and what do you mean by flexible constitution? It is nothing but a rigid constitution is that requires a special procedures for the amendment. Okay, if it is a rigid constitution, then it requires special procedures for the amendment, right? For example, American Constitution. So American Constitution is a rigid constitution. For changing, for amending a part in the constitution, they require special procedures. Then a flexible constitution is that for the amendment they need simple procedures or like making ordinary law. So for example, British Constitution. Okay, so there are two kinds of constitution, flexible constitution and rigid constitution. In the case of rigid constitution, special procedures is needed for amending the constitution. In the case of flexible constitution, flexible constitution, so here we can amend the constitution like preparing a new ordinary law. So here simple procedure is needed. So the Indian constitution is known as blend of rigidity and flexibility because some of the parts, if we want to amendment some of the parts in the constitution, it needs special procedures. But in the case of some other parts, if we want to amendment, it needs simple procedures. Okay, so that is the difference. So we can move to next one. The another feature is parliamentary form of government. Parliamentary form of government. So everyone knows that India is following parliamentary form of government, and we discussed that in which country we inspired the idea of parliamentary form of government. We inspired the idea of parliamentary form of government from British Constitution, right? So we discussed that. So there are mainly two kinds of election system, that is presidential election system and the parliamentary form of election system. In America, which system is following? In America is following presidential system of government, right? Every people can directly participate in the election of the president. But here in India, we opted the parliamentary form of government. We will select the MLAs and we will select the MPs and they will select the ministers, right? So India is opted parliamentary form of government. So it is one of the important feature of Indian constitution. Then we can move to next feature, a secular state, right? Another important feature of the Indian constitution is a secular state, right? Does India have an official religion? My question is, does India have an official religion? Is it? No, we know that India doesn't have an official religion, right? India doesn't have an official religion like Saudi Arabia has or like Qatar has. So we can say that India doesn't have an official religion. So why? Because India is a secular state. So the constitution of India stands for a secular state. We does not uphold any particular religion as the official religion of the Indian state. Okay, so we know that India is a secular state. We don't have an official religion. There is no official religion of this country. So it is the one of the important feature. it is a secular state. Then we can move to next one. The another feature is universal adult franchise. Okay, universal adult franchise. So we are discussing all these points only for the paper one aspects, only for the perspective of the paper one higher education aspects. Okay, if you are studying political science or you are a student, you are going to write the NET examination in the subject of political science, you have to study more about this. You have to study in detail in all these features. You have to study in very detail. Okay, so we are discussing today only for the purpose of scoring marks in the higher education topic. So the next feature is universal adult franchise. So what does it mean? It is nothing but the people of India have voting right. When the person who has the age of 18, they can vote, they can participate in the election, right? Previously, what was the age? Previously, what was the age of participating in the election? It was 21, right? Previously, it was the age of, previously we can say that the people of India, if the people of India want to vote, they must have 21 years of age. But now it is the number of 18 years of age. If a student or if a person has the age of 18, they can participate in the election. So regarding this, we have to understand that we already said that the voting age was reduced to 18 years from 21 years. Previously it was 21 years, right? What was the age for participating in the election? 21. But now it is 18 years. Okay, so it is reduced to 18 years from 21 years in the year of 1989 by the 61st Constitutional Amendment Act 1988. So this year and the amendment number we should be keep in our mind while going to write examination, right? So previously it was 21 years, but now it is 18 years. Okay, and in which constitutional amendment reduced the age of participating in the election, age of providing votes from 21 years to 18 years? In which constitutional amendment? It is 61st Constitutional Amendment, right? So this year and this amendment and the this age should be keep in our mind while going to write the examination. Then we can check the, yes, so these are the some of the important features we have discussed today. So I hope you understand that. I hope you understand all these features. So today we discussed the topic features of the Indian Constitution. So what are the features? What are the main features we have? Okay, so we discussed some of the key features, some of the important features that we should keep in our mind while going to write examination. So what are the features? So we discussed about the lengthiest written constitution, and we discussed about drawn from the various sources. We discussed blend of rigidity and flexibility, then parliamentary form of government, secular state, universal adult franchise. So all these things we discussed in detail. So it is very important. So there were questions from Indian Constitution. If you analyze the previous year question papers, definitely you can see the question from the topic Indian Constitution. That's why we are taking some of the key points, some of the fundamental points regarding the Indian Constitution. I hope you understand all these things, and we can see in the next class with some other topic. Thank you.